In our previous discussion, we separated the process of inheritance in two parts. In the first part, we initialized and got access to the properties of employee inside engineer. And in the second part, we created a copy of employee.prototype through object.create utility method and assigned it to engineer.prototype to inherit the methods defined on employee's prototype. In ES6 class syntax also, we'll achieve the same in two steps. Firstly, let's comment out the logs over here because as of now we'll be working with ES6 class. And let's define our engineer ES6 class, which serves as like an engineer function constructor. Okay. And we solve the second step by just saying class engineer ES6 extends employee ES6. That's all. Extends keyword will make available all the methods defined inside employee ES6 to engineer ES6. And really that's all we need to do for the second step. No prototype, no object.create, and also no resetting of any constructor property. Everything is looked after by extends keyword, followed by the class name from whom we want to inherit from. So essentially we have replaced these two lines of code with just these two words, extends followed by the class name. Let's prove it actually. And see really if extends keyword is making the methods of employee ES6 available to our engineer ES6 object. So let's uncomment these logs, and now my Sammy will be an object of engineer ES6, and just remove these arguments because as of now we haven't passed or we haven't defined any constructor method of our engineer ES6. So let's save it and head back to our browser, and okay, just leave this undefined fields as of now, and inside its __ proto we can clearly see the getFullName method, which is defined on employee ES6 class, but it is available over our Sammy object, which is actually an object created from engineer ES6 class. Okay. Before proceeding further, there is a standard convention that we follow to refer to our classes when doing inheritance. It is employee ES6 is called as superclass, and engineer ES6 that inherits from employee ES6 is called as subclass. Now, as to finish up our first step, we need to find a way to initialize and get access to the properties defined on employee ES6. To do that, let's first define our constructor method of engineer ES6 that serves like a function constructor's body. And let's pass arguments to it that we used to pass for engineer function constructor. Engineer function constructor was used to accept first name, last name, and field as its arguments. So let's pass the same to our engineer ES6 class constructor. Okay. Now the important point here is when we extend subclass with superclass using extends keyword, we'll be given a handle to a special keyword called super. Its functionality is super keyword lets superclass, which is employee ES6, accessible from inside our subclass engineer ES6. So to initialize the properties on employee ES6 as a part of engineer ES6, I need to call my superclass constructor from here inside my subclass constructor. The way to do it is, so simply call super and pass the arguments our superclass constructor is expecting. So it was expecting first name and last name. That's all. This will simply make first name and last name available over our engineer ES6. So let's create our own field inside engineer ES6 class and set it to field argument. Okay. Now pass the arguments to our Sammy object. So first name I'm gonna pass as Sammy, last name as Winchester, and field this time will be electronics. Okay, let's save it and let's head back to our browser to check the output on the console, and let's expand it, and we can get to see all the properties defined on superclass has been properly initialized in our subclass object Sammy along with its own property field which is set to electronics. We can also confirm in its prototype chain there inside it still holds a reference to our superclass method getFullName. So with this, we finished both the steps and achieved the inheritance using ES6 class. Let's try actually accessing getFullName method through our Sammy object. So I'm gonna log Sammy.getFullName. Let's save it, head back to our browser, and here we can clearly see Sammy Winchester, which is my Sammy object's full name. Okay, so we have successfully inherited all the data members and methods of our superclass employee ES6 to our subclass objects. Now that we have got methods and properties inherited from employee ES6 inside engineer ES6, if we want, we can even extend our engineer ES6 by adding more methods. Let's add one more method which we defined over engineer functions prototype, that is getDescription. Remember, we shouldn't use any function keyword while defining methods inside our ES6 class. I'm going to copy this return statement and I'm going to paste it inside it. And let's access our getDescription method now through our SAMI object. Okay, let's save it. Head back to our browser. And there it is. You can get to see the output. Sammy Winchester is electronics engineer. Perfect. As a side note, since getFullName is a superclass method, we can also access it using super.getFullName like this. So as a proof, let's save it and head back to our browser. I'm gonna refresh it again and we get to see the same output. Sam Winchester is electronics engineer. Only rule to access using super is those methods should be defined outside of our superclass constructor but not inside it. That's all. Okay. As a final thing, let's compare the structures of our SAM object and SAMI object. I'm gonna comment out these logs, and this SAMI object over here is created from engineer ES6 class and inherited from employee ES6 class. And similarly, I'm gonna uncomment out this log, and this SAM object over here is created from engineer function constructor and inherited from employee function constructor. Okay, let's save it and check our contents on the console. Let's expand them. If you can observe their structure, they look strikingly similar and identical because they are implemented in the same way under the hood. To give a conclusion on this, ES6 classes and inheritance are still implemented using prototype system and follow prototypal inheritance only. ES6 classes just makes syntax more higher level and concise to do object-oriented programming in JavaScript. Okay. When you look at ES6 class inheritance compared to the legacy prototypal inheritance, you would have to agree that ES6 class syntax is a little bit easier to write and has less boilerplate code compared to the old way. And as long as you understand how ES6 classes work in JavaScript, you are good to go. There's definitely a slight drawback to the new ES6 class syntax, especially for beginners, as they might have some misconceptions about how classes and inheritance work internally in ES6, because you don't get to use any prototype or don't need to write any boilerplate code to do inheritance now. One important point that I would like to make here is, if you don't understand how JavaScript prototype system and prototypal inheritance works, then ES6 class syntax will make your life much easier. But I'll still recommend you to understand the prototype chain in JavaScript, even if you are never planning to use it again because of these classes. Remember, better programmers understand things, they don't imitate. Okay, before we finish up our discussion on ES6 classes, there are a couple of things that I would like to point out in the next section. So let's keep moving.